So, welcome again, folks, to the Astrology of Family Karma and Relationships podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Mallon, and again, so lucky to have a wonderful fellow astrologer and therapist healer, Lisa Hagenbach. And so, Lisa,
Hello.
welcome again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Alexander. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, folks, today I'm so fortunate to work with Lisa because she's introduced, I really think, actually, a powerful juncture of the tools of family constellations work, as Lisa will tell us, and astrology. It really is kind of nearer and dearer to my heart than I could have known before knowing Lisa. It's in some ways material and work I've been doing all these years of my own practice with clients, which really is, I think, Lisa, um, astrology charts as a mirror of the soul, not something that people don't know about. I think a lot of astrologers speak of it that way. Our personal chart, a mirror of our soul, who we are, who the individual is. Um, that's really what a chart is. It's a map of the sky when you're born, and in that way, there's kind of like this coincidence of creation around us, and we're born into this world, and our chart describes that astronomically and seasonally. So I've always looked at astrology, Lisa, as this archetypal tool. This map of the sky is what it is astronomically. Since I'm a backyard astronomer, I'm all over that one. That the
Yeah.
astrology charts are maps of the sky, and it does describe whether we're born during a new moon, a full moon, or whether we're born during, as I joke, in the winter, a proverbial blizzard, or in the summer during a pool party. The chart
Right.
describes your season sign. And so that's what most of us know about astrology, that it's either to do with the seasons or the signs of the seasons or the time of day, and all those factors are part of what a chart is. But that chart is complex in terms of what it mirrors. I mean, it mirrors the situation you're born into. And so, um, Lisa, you are a healer, an astrologer, and family therapist, and particularly family, I should say, family constellations therapy. So you're going to tell us again about that. We did part A and sort of part one, part two, part A, part B before. This is kind of
Mhm.
our third program about the foundations of family constellations therapies and astrology. But you can fill us in about some of these, some of what this means. So let me go to a screen share here
Okay.
and some slides that we've created for today, and you can kind of fill us in here. Um, so indeed, we're discussing family constellations therapy, dear Lisa. Family constellations therapy, and when I first heard the term family constellations, I thought it had to do with astronomy and constellations,
hmm
but I'm not. It's not true. So tell us a little bit more.
Right. I felt the same. I just thought it had something to do with astrology, but and I love the slide because as we talked before, the star clusters, in order to form, an image that we can see from Earth and the sky, the stars all need to be in their exact place in the cluster for us to see order, if you will. And that's the similarity with family constellation work, is that the family members all in a family system, when they are in their proper order, then the flow of life and love is harmonious. And when things inevitably become disordered or inharmonious, family constellation work is a way to put that back in order so that the individual family members' lives can flow in a much more peaceful and harmonious way with each other.
So the term family constellation therapy again had no particular root in astrological work.
No, it was founded by Bert Hellinger, and he was German, um, many different modalities, but he really came up with the orders of love by observing the Zulu tribes for 16 years, and he saw that there was an order in a family system, and when everything was in order, everything flowed well, and so he extrapolated. I know he explained it in the past two episodes, but he came up with these orders of love, and they really hold true. just in their basic form. And it's a guideline for a family system to operate more you know, better. I guess, more
So,
peaceful and
so Bert Hellinger founded this and coined the term family constellations work,
yeah.
meaning a constellation of family members. Is that the implication?
The implication, yes, is that we're all born into a family system, and each there are these orders where all the members have a right and need to belong, and that but there's a hierarchy in terms of the love flowing from the ancestors to the descendants.
Mm.
And there's a number of different orders that when everything is in its proper place, then the whole family system functions better as a whole. But we're always, individuals and free will and human consciousness, there's a lot that can put a family system out of order. And family constellations it works to make it more a complete system.
It's interesting because you did introduce today, as in other shows, previous shows that we've done about this. Again, this is sort of our intention today, folks, is part three, where we're going to kind of have Lisa and I Lisa put the rubber to the road of
Mhm.
astrology and its connection to family constellations therapies.
Yeah.
But you did illustrate that family constellations um, earlier moments ago, you talked about the star patterns of actual astronomical constellations and
Mhm.
how from our earthbound perspective, you could say from our homebound perspective, or maybe our family bound perspective, it's another, I'm mixing some metaphors here, that
Yeah.
we view the sky, the nighttime sky, and we connect the dots. Clearly different cultures, from Inuit to, in Alaska to Amazonian cultures, we'll connect those dots differently.
Yeah.
But we've adopted to a great degree internationally, Greco-Roman constellations, the signs of the zodiac, for example, or the constellation of Orion, the Hunter, etc., the Big Dipper, Ursa Major. We connect these star dots. There's kind of an order that even the ancients, to navigate the nighttime sky and navigate their environment, or maybe celestial navigation on the water, early explorers, they would connect these dots in their minds to find their way
Yeah.
in the nighttime sky and in reference to the earth we walk and navigate upon. So you're saying, a family constellation can be ordered, like flowingly ordered, or conversely, more typically of the human experience, not perfectly ordered, like disordered
Right.
or not organized. Can you clarify that a little more again?
Yeah, so the chart is great because everyone and everything in your life is contained within it. So you can know it's a great descriptor of where you are in your family system. That's why, and we talked about transgenerational astrology and it's and looking at the charts. And so and like I said, it describes our ancestors, our descendants, and it can give some archetypal information to it. Maybe it describes part of the our purpose within our family system and what we're here to either carry forward because it's working really well,
Mm.
or we need to, maybe it's stagnant and we need to disrupt it and we need to have somebody come in and do things differently, and to just to get the family system. I think of it as like vital, right? Because you need movement in order to keep things vital. And it can be like, well, I'm trying to heal something within the family system. So it blends really well together because I can read the energy of a life issue and that somebody's come to constellate. I can read that energy through their birth chart, and then I can pull in the ancestors that might be connected to the pattern, because when a pattern isn't solved 5 generations forward, it doesn't end with that person who couldn't solve it. The descendants come in to carry the issue into the next generation to try to make it whole, to make the family system whole. But then inevitably it goes awry because it wasn't theirs to begin with. It's like getting somebody else's upset stomach that's not yours and you can't process it.
That's a really grounded analogy. You know, getting someone else's upset stomach.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's grounded in an extremely common, uh, it's typical family dynamic. You know,
yeah,
mom and dad come together. Mom and dad, mom gets pregnant, mom and dad get pregnant. They're carrying a child. She's carrying a child. The child is born into some situation. And you know, as we know, all of us, our lives have these flows. You know, many chapters or layers of that flow or lack of flow. The flow
yeah,
can be harmonious. The flow can be staccato. Yeah?
yeah,
So that is one thing you're introducing, this idea of the flow or maybe even stuck energy, and it has me
yeah.
thinking. By the way, as we go to do some more with our PowerPoint here, some of the slides we'll talk about in a moment are our charts, you know, our personal charts that the lay public, I would say, believes that when a person's birth chart is calculated by an astrologer, it looks static. It
Hmm.
looks like a set thing. You know, those of us who come from a different, God, I'm almost at this point coming from a different era, you know, not the digital, the analog era, you know, where you know, we think of a Polaroid, you know, a Polaroid camera back in the 60s or 70s. You'd take a picture and it would spit out a little, you know, square of a picture, an instant picture, which was a big deal back then.
Yeah,
But it's a snapshot in time.
yeah.
And it is. It's a micro snapshot of exactly the astronomy of everything, where things are astronomically aligned in a local horizon line, the Earth we're born onto, right? We all know that as astrology students, that that horizontal line is the physical Earth the soul is arriving on. So the top part of a chart is the visible astronomical sky. The bottom part of a chart is what is beneath the observer's feet, like, you know, literally beneath your feet at the earth you're standing on. So the astrology chart has this great symbology. But the other piece that the chart reminds me, or that rather your comment reminded me, is that this chart is, while it looks static, an astronomer knows every one of these planetary bodies, like the moon, are in motion.
Hmm.
It's just a snapshot, just like a picture. You go to the ocean, you go to the beach, you take pictures of your friends. It's a snapshot at the moment, but the sun is at the beach, you know, maybe high overhead, and soon will be setting, you know. Everything's in motion in this sky map. It's not static. Inherent for the average astrologer, I think, is that awareness of this being part of a system, you know, part of a larger system. Nothing is static. Everything's in motion. And so when you talk about alignment, like proper alignment, or maybe even, you know, my words, you know, jazzing things into motion, getting things moving, or people or players in the family system who get things moving, or players in the family who are disruptors, you know.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's a, you know, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. Sorry.
Well,
I went blank. Sorry.
so let's get kick back to our
Anything
kind of
that
our
I would
template here a
add
little
to
bit.
that, I guess.
So you know, the idea of family constellations therapies, that therapeutic modality of looking at the individual as part of a greater family system, that in other words, none of us are born into emptiness or a blank slate. We're
Yeah, we're not
always
an
born.
island, right? We're not an island. We're all born within a community system that we may want to exit, but the blood is thicker than water, right? You're in the system you're in. So
Well, and then there are different systems. As you said, Bert Hellinger was doing his work, a lot of his sort of foundational work, was it in Africa, African nations?
yeah, he was a missionary and he went to he was a Jesuit priest, a missionary. He went to study the Zulu tribe culture, and he mixed in what he saw to some of he was a Jungian analyst, and he did a lot of different energy, psychological modalities. And so when he saw how the tribes functioned and what functioned well within them, I think he brilliantly put this together as a healing modality that has really practical implications for how it can shift your life and your relationships. And that's kind of today I thought we could get into the meat and bones of like, this is all well and good, but why would I come to a family constellation session? Why would I do this? How would I know what I'm, needing to clear? We're hoping this story can kind of make it practical of how it operated in my life and how it really propelled me into wanting to do more with the work. So
So you know what crosses my mind when you share that about Bert and his work in I'm sorry, which African nation was he in?
the Zulu tribes.
In Zulu. So that
Mhm.
I'm trying to think if that would be uh, the Zulu, South Africa, perhaps. I'm forgetting that where the Zulu are indigenous.
Yeah,
But the reason I'm going there is he was amongst we would say by Western standards third world, or
yeah,
really we should instead third world almost suggests first world better, second world. So maybe we should say
yeah.
indigenous, or maybe we should say
Indigenous is
nature
good.
based, a nature based culture, a natural culture that is
Mhm.
not mechanized or artificially lighted, so to speak, literally. And it comes back again to astrology, astronomy for me. The charts describing nature.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they weren't walking around with cell phones.
They
You
weren't
know,
working on, not back then. Now that
no,
a lot of
everything was
African nations they actually are, but back then,
back
yeah,
then, back when he studied it,
yeah.
and it's just how, and it was very much, in a way, when you first come to it, you can think, well, this is a little patriarchal because it's like the father, the mother, the firstborn, but it's
Mm.
just about understanding this through the container of the orders of love and then applying them to modern world living and
Well, I'm kind of thinking, astrology is timeless in terms of it being astronomy astrology. It's about cycles of nature. uh,
yeah,
Without necessarily man's, defining anything. A full moon is a full moon, no matter what part of the planet you're on, no matter what culture you're in. The full moon is the full moon. It's an
right,
astronomical phenomenon that's
yeah,
worldwide. And I'm
yeah,
thinking that Bert's work here in indigenous culture, Zulu culture, for instance, in this case, brings us back to that, nature-based, more rhythmic, nature-based culture. And I'm just you're sort of
natural
just
rhythm.
kicking those ideas up for me.
No,
But
I think, yeah, I agree. Natural rhythms and, universal tenets, quantum, physics teaches us we're all interconnected. And that's part of the work is that there's a magic in it and how things shift because it doesn't make logical sense.
ha,
But
love
it's
that.
about everything being, when it's in its order, then it flows well, just like nature is cooperative, right? It's more, we got everything working well together.
When we're in harmony with nature, and there's natural balance. That's interesting,
Yeah.
becoming less and less normative in Western culture. But anyway, so putting the rubber to the road, family
Yeah.
constellations therapies, and joining them astrologically is kind of our next step for this particular program. And tell us a little bit about this picture we have here.
Okay, so we're going to tell the story of Clarence today, who I was always fascinated by. So I'm going to try to make this as concise as
Now,
possible.
this is a family. This is your family lineage. Is that right?
This is my family lineage, correct? So Clarence was my uncle, or is my uncle, I guess, right? So he is on my paternal side, my father's brother. So Clarence was the firstborn into a farming family in a
And is
small
this
community.
Clarence here, the this older
Yeah, that's
boy?
Clarence. And that he's sitting next to his sister, my Aunt Dolores, who is about to turn 102. So she's
Oh
still
my
with
goodness!
us. Yeah.
Wow, this is Aunt Dolores a little earlier than 102. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right, right. So Clarence, at age 5, he was holding on to his father's hand, and they were attending a community funeral. So in a very small town, so short distance travel away from where his home would have been. And he let go of his father's hand and he ran across the road and was struck by a car and killed right in front of his parents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And I had heard the story. I was always fascinated by, I think, I'm a Scorpio rising. I have like this fascination with death. And I just couldn't square, like why did he run? Why did he let go of his dad's hand? Why did he die? Why did he, why was he killed in front of his parents? I just would like ruminate in my mind. I didn't really talk about it a lot, but I always kind of thought about him. And the thing about it is, and this is, so I, unbeknownst to myself, became or was entangled in his, we call it entanglement in a family constellation work with his energy. And which is not to say that I reincarnated as Clarence. So I just want to make that kind of clear. But what happened was, you can imagine, how grief-stricken the family was. And this is, somebody probably they thought was going to take over the family farm. So my dad said that they never spoke about Clarence. There was no pictures of Clarence in the house. Clarence was just kind of, and not out of, so he was excluded from the family system, but not out of any malice. It was out of grief. It was out of love. It was out of too much love. It was out of too much pain. So in family constellation systems, one of the orders is that everybody has a right to belong. So Clarence's energy was out of the family system. So what will happen is there will come in a descendant that takes up the baton to say, I'm going to bring Clarence back into the family system. I had no idea that that was me until I found family constellation work and I attended a workshop, and my teacher Barry would talk about how everybody, you can bring in somebody's energy by just bringing them into what we call a constellation session, which would basically just bring in a representative for Clarence and put him in his proper order, because now he was the firstborn, right? So that's a birth order. So after he passed, I grew up thinking that Aunt Dolores was the oldest one, right? But she really wasn't the oldest one in that
And
family. It
is
was
this Aunt
Clarence.
Dolores in the picture again?
Yeah,
Remind me. Sorry.
that's Aunt
I know
Dolores in the
the
picture, right?
viewers are
So
probably quicker than I am. Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
in a sense, like her energy became like, okay, now I'm the oldest, right? But in a sense, because Clarence had been excluded from the family system, unbeknownst to anybody. And so, but she's not in her proper order, too, so this is how things can get out of order very easily. And
You
for
know,
no,
it brings,
no,
forgive me, it brings to mind,
yeah,
with twins, let's say identical twins, it's very normative for one twin to say to the other twin, "Well, I'm the oldest in the family," or
yeah,
you're the youngest," or they are very clear that if it's a minute or two or three or five, there's the older twin and the younger one, and they have all also those sort of family positionings of the oldest child, the middle child.
yeah. I
So
have my oldest are twin brothers. I have twin brothers born 4 months, 4 minutes apart. So Mark is the oldest, Mike is, second born. Yeah.
wow,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Well, that's a
Yeah.
perfect illustration. Do they identify as one elder or one the younger, or do they have that?
They have a little bit, I think I experience Mark as, yeah, they both have that quality. I think Mike, I always viewed Mike as a little bit like wanting to, we always called him, Ed Jr. He wanted to be our dad.
Hmm.
But Mark is a quiet, leadership role. So yeah, I see the dynamics. They basically have the same chart, and then that gets really interesting because then you get into what are their consciousness. They're a little bit different
Well,
conscious.
we're gonna definitely go there in
Yeah,
future sessions.
yeah.
So,
So okay,
yeah, your story when you mentioned, Dolores, who's now
yeah,
102 in the photograph here, and Clarence, who passed at age 5, as you say, Clarence was sort of forgotten out of grief,
yes.
and therefore Dolores saw herself as the elder of the family, which she was functionally. But
Mhm.
you're suggesting that there's in the psyche of the family, there's something in the fabric of what was really happening. Maybe this also happens when there are miscarriages for some
Oh,
women. That might be.
absolutely. Miscarriages and abortions and family secrets are kind of the number one thing in family constellation work.
Mm.
So, kind of getting back to the story, I'm sitting there in this workshop and I'm like, this is such an easy constellation. Like, I can really help out my family. All I have to do, and I'd write to Barry and I'd say, I want to do just a quick constellation. I just need to bring Clarence's energy back in. And, but it in so I this was in like a group workshop, but and so rightly so, Barry always would go to I call it the 5 alarm fire, and like, what is the most, profound thing that we can shift today? So I never constellated this disorder in my family. I never did a constellation on it. I never did a one privately with him. I didn't do one publicly with him. So that's to me the most interesting part of the story in a way, is because of immersing myself in the work and going to these workshops. Every family system has a Clarence in their line, right? So what ended up happening was, so my mom passed, and then we were going to move my dad up to his cottage out of the family farm. Now that would have been where Clarence was born. My dad was born. I grew up in the house. I was entangled with Clarence, but I literally lived in the house that he grew up in, right? For his short life. And so we're cleaning out the family farm. I have never seen a picture of Clarence my whole life. And I didn't find one when we were cleaning out the house. We'd take my dad up to his cottage, and then my son wanted to pick up some guns from the family. So we went back to the house. I thought I'd say goodbye to it. We go back to the family farm and we go inside. My son's going to pick out his guns. And for some reason, I walk into my dad's bedroom, and laying on top of a bunch of pictures is the picture that is in that slide. And I just immediately knew that's Clarence. And I picked it up and I went out and I said, Dad, who is this? And he said, well, that's Clarence. I'd never seen a picture of him.
Wow.
And one of the ways that you can bring somebody back in the family system is even just to honor them, you know? So I grabbed the picture and I said, okay, this is coming with us. And I actually just put it in his garage when we left. And I said, I want you to, I kind of just brought the picture in. I thought, oh my God, I'm bringing him back in. And then the next time we visited my dad, he had this picture hanging outside of his bedroom window. He put it on the wall.
Wow.
And so Clarence, through bringing the picture back in, and then, so I'll tell this piece of the story. So, then when he left that cottage to live, went to a assisted living facility where he is now, he brought, he didn't, for some reason, he didn't want to hang that on the wall. So I said, I want that picture, and it hangs in my office right now. Cause that's like, I look at it all the time. So how it impacted my life. So I was always the oddball out, the different one in my family. This is how I perceived myself. And again, I want to say it wasn't done out of malice. There was a lot of love. I grew up with Juno Ward Cleaver, beautiful family. I have nothing to complain about. I just always felt like the odd one out. And then when I found my purpose, astrology, my dad, now father in a family constellation work is he represents your work. So my dad's connection to my work is really insignificant. My dad would make very disparaging remarks about astrology. I was in sales like he was, and then now I'm an astrologer. What is this? And he would make comments. He would never ask me about what it is. He's Catholic, it was bad. And so after, what I really noticed as a stark difference is when he brought Clarence's picture back into his home, every conversation, every single one, I noted it. At some point he would say, well, how's your work going, Lisa? What is it you do again with clients? He would ask a question about it. And I was
Wow.
like, that was the stark difference, is like the healing that brought to me is all of a sudden he accepted my work. And so, which is so important for your dad to accept your work. And that did not happen until we brought Clarence back in to the family system.
We'll have to We'll have to show my chart because your story of
Yeah.
astrology in our culture.
Yeah.
I think many astrologers, most astrologers, I think Bob Hand, famous Robert Hand, famous
Mhm.
astrologer. I always say the Einstein of Western astrology in the 20th century, 21st, early 21st. He said that this scientific paradigm has to literally die off before a Western astrology will be able to rise as a sort of a Jungian, think of Carl Jung, a Jungian archetypal system that it is.
Yeah.
But most astrologers, I've heard a lot of professional astrologers who talk about going into public forums and not discussing what they do, or saying that they're
Yeah.
counselors, or saying that they're life coaches, or just not saying it at all. I certainly attend a number of astronomy conferences every year, and I sure as hell don't advertise that I'm an astrologer. Although the word gets out, years earlier, it could even get ugly with astronomy conferences. But in any
I
case,
bet. Oh, yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're
Mhm.
saying. You're saying that the father in the Western, and maybe even in indigenous archetypes,
Yeah, that's well, this is the order of love is that the father would represent work. So if
and
a
does that mean the outer world intersecting with the outer world work?
yeah, so if a client comes to me and they have and it's their work isn't flowing well, I immediately go to their father.
Mm-hmm.
And which immediately means I go to their son and their birth.
Uh-huh.
So
Maybe it's a time for us to throw some slides up for the astrologers out there.
yeah, and so it just, I like the story, and we're going to talk about more of the charts, but the real crux of the story is that by bringing his energy back into the family system, and literally I did it just by immersing myself in the work. It just it magically created this moment of finding the picture, moving it to my dad's house. Now I have it. And then it deepened the connection with my dad, who just passed. And so now he passed in spirit, and I'm like, I'm good because I'm good with dad. We're good. And it's just the peace and resolution you can get. That's just a practical. I wanted people to understand like why would I do this? What could this, mean in my life? And it can mean a lot.
Well, absolutely, and so it sounds like the healing part of the family constellation work is for the therapist and the client to together um, gain a perspective, like the constellations, like connecting the dots of the star pattern, connecting the
Mhm.
dots in the family system. Both those dots that one can readily see, the brightest stars and the most obvious, as well as those things that are not as easy astronomically, so to speak, to see, the fainter stars or the stars that are in some way, hidden. And I'm wondering, now, rubber to the road,
Yeah.
how as a family constellations therapist, you interweave that work with astrology.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we talked about it in the last episode. I think my chart is set up, I'm really interested in human relationships. I've got that Mars Venus right down at the bottom of my chart and Aquarius, that fourth house is family, right? And growing up is the different one. And now doing family ancestral healing work that's in the United States isn't that well known. It's a little different.
Uh-huh.
My moon, being in Aries, I don't facilitate groups, I do individuals sessions. I don't know if I'll ever get to the group dynamic. That's a lot to manage, but so the moon in Aries, I do individual constellations. It's in my sixth house of work.
And
Um,
that moon, I might add, astronomically, is only you know 7 degrees off the descendant, the western sky.
yeah.
So that means that the moon just set, like 28 minutes, before your birth. The moon recently had just set, half an hour before your birth. The moon just set, and as astrologers know, any planet that is angular in a chart is going to be a very important planet. As you mentioned, the
Yeah.
Venus and Mars at the bottom, the moon having just set on the western sky. And the moon, astrologically, we take it to be, I always say moon cycles, like menstrual cycles, moon cycle. Moon is family.
Yeah.
The moon talks about that emotional body of the family, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you
And
do family work
mhm,
in a this seventh house is one on one. It's a relationship, the relationship part of the chart where
yeah.
we interact with others. So you do family work one on one with
Yes.
clients.
Mm-hmm.
Your chart describes this, you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think very much so because if you think about Aquarius being the collective, right? So the individual work that somebody does in their family system, then the indigenous cultures believed that the healing goes back 7 generations and forward 7 generations. And so if you think about the impact you can have from just one person shifting things, it's pretty significant.
But well, so you're saying well, you illustrated how your awareness of Clarence and Clarence's picture altered your relationship with your father when you brought Clarence back into the family
Mhm,
fold, so to speak, that was really significant between you and your dad kind of opening to you. So
mhm.
where there was something unintendedly closed, Clarence was hit by a car at 5,
Right. So
and
that's
and
right. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's Mars, right? That would be the automobile.
Well, let's go back to your chart for a second. So you're saying
Yeah.
that your chart is mirroring the bottom of the chart, a family, the fourth house, which is the family in an astrology chart. Your chart says Mars. There's an action oriented or a martial event with family that has
Hmm.
to do with your family roots. Is that what you're getting at? That even has to
Yeah.
do with. Well, I love this. You have your Mars action, or you could say the circle of spirit with an arrow, directed will, or the will of the father, or the will of the family. um, Son is daddy at the bottom of your chart. So it says there's a foundational thing involving your father. That
Hmm.
that in other words, this birth that this couple had in 1966, your birth date. This child that came in 1966, your chart implies, has some foundational piece in the family foundation. Your birth, your spirit, for your father particularly, has some foundational piece in this family, and that Mars is there, action, with Venus, love and relationship. And then the black moon. Maybe you could talk about that in your thoughts about what the black
Hmm.
moon is. I don't know if the black moon, I always say, is the apogee of the moon, its most distant orbit compared to the Earth at any given moment. I think of the black moon myself as like the unprocessed, unconscious material or something that the family
Hmm.
doesn't talk about. For instance, I know someone who has the black moon at the top of their chart, the
Hmm.
career angle, and
Hmm.
they are a hospice nurse. People
Hmm.
don't like talking about death. And when your loved one is in the hospital or maybe on hospice, family members don't want to talk about death. So this person
Right.
I know who has Black Moon, the hidden unprocessed family material, at the top of the chart, she deals with unprocessed family material when someone's like on the deathbed and the family is there.
Yeah.
You have Black Moon at the bottom of your chart, so maybe I'm just kind of, for me, I'm leaping forward here, like, oh, unprocessed material in the family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it speaks to, the quantum, we're all interconnected, right? So as I uncover family secrets, or maybe, or I shouldn't say I uncover them, but as I work with clients and it, part of those emotional patterns that they're not, um, you know, actively processing, like there's a healing that occurs not only for my family system, but for all family systems. So it's an interesting placement. I think, the Mars and Venus down at that Mars rules my ascendant and Venus my descendant, right? And I remember just being I would get angry about my dad just not acknowledging my work. I would get angry about it.
Uh,
I would be like, I don't understand. It's not, he's not interested in me. Why doesn't he ask anything about me? So there was something really sparking me to clear this. And so that was all before I found family constellation work. Then it all made sense to me. I'm like, oh, I get it. So we can fix this. And we did. And that's how it's nice that I could let that anger go. That's a lot to carry. And so I think that it just speaks to I think, having that at the foundation of your chart, it's a lot of what you came in, for your work and life purpose with it being opposite the midheaven.
Yeah, in Astrology 101, the ascendant we associate with self. Carl Jung called it persona.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of ascendant persona is the other, or I always think, the sunrise point where the sun rises in a chart and where the sun sets in our chart. Sunset is about, working all day and bringing it home and cooking it up in the pan. So the
Yeah.
seventh house is the other and interacting, coming home to one's life or one's spouse or one's family. Um, so you're saying the bottom of the chart, the nadir, the opposite of the career angle, is the home. And your
Mm-hmm.
chart has a very powerful area of home that's occupied. Technically, the fourth house, Astrology 101 says, is the angle of the home itself. Personally, the way I do astrology, I look at this sort of whole bottom half of the chart as the inner psyche, the inner world. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
astronomically not what's visible astronomically, it's what's not seen beneath the observer's feet. It's
Yeah.
internal, not external. And so, the metaphor is the bottom of our chart is the hub, and it is where the sun is at midnight every night for all of us. It's at the bottom of the sky beneath our feet, and so it describes the inner psyche. So I'm seeing that this is a very powerful chart that says family is going to be a huge theme in this
Mm-hmm.
person's life. And I'm guessing you're saying astrology 101 would say that Venus Mars, especially with Black Moon, that there's something particular involving that those planets are symbolizing about family.
Yeah, I think, uncovering patterns of, that just kind of can trigger us. I think of the Black Moon Lilith as like you can get triggered by that because you haven't really worked, if you haven't done the healing yourself, what I think of it as like the unconscious, subconscious patterns, emotional patterns, but also, being female, it's that side of, what women do that isn't culturally accepted, right? Or that the patriarchy doesn't want you to do, and it's, I've got it in Aquarius, wanting to do it differently. So,
Well, yeah, so that Mars, Venus, Black Moon, and Aquarius at the bottom of the chart, that it says
mhm,
that you either symbolically bring in as a soul, or there is something around your being in this family as a soul that's going to bring up male, female, Venus, Mars themes,
mhm,
role, male, female role themes,
mhm.
and that black moon, things that are hidden or unexpressed. I mean, you called the black moon how did you word it, please?
Oh, I think of it as like our unconscious or subconscious emotional patterns, things that can trigger us because we haven't really, it's where we react instead of responding to something.
Yeah, I agree
Because
totally.
yeah, and
I agree because the black moon is astronomically the astronomical point, the apogee or apsis of the moon in relationship to the Earth. It's where the moon in its orbit is most distant at any given time.
mhm,
And since the moon is moving away from the Earth every year, I think roughly an inch a year, the moon's moving away from the Earth. Obviously, in many millions of years, the moon will be sufficiently far from the Earth to life as we know it shift.
yeah,
So that black moon kind of talks about the departure of emotional connection, where there's either an encapsulation or a disconnect. I
yeah,
think they talk about the
yeah.
goddess Black Moon, right? Black Moon Lilith being sort of in some ways unprocessed material.
Yeah, and if I think about it, I didn't talk to him about my work either. I just, judged him for not asking me about it. So, you have to kind of own your part in it too. Is like I felt like the different one, but did I ever really try to so I think there's a lot of judgment that I had about my family that got healed in this too. Like I could have forced the issue and said, let's talk about this, and instead I didn't. So, hidden, right?
But then there's another thing that we were in the last couple of shows as well, maybe our last program particularly. You mentioned in Astrology 101, the third house particularly is known as the house of siblings.
Yeah.
And here at the bottom of the chart, at the nadir, the family hub, there is Mars, either the god of war or of accidents. There's an
Yeah.
accident with the son here, your father. Your father's sibling, your father's sibling had an auto accident, died at age 5, and that Mars,
Our cycle.
that phenomenon with Clarence, I think you suggested, had a very powerful, theme in your family, and that your
Yeah.
chart suggests you've in some way embodied, inherited. And you said that you always were curious. You found the photograph, and what's the family constellations term that you are interwoven,
In
intermeshed,
entanglement.
entangled?
Yeah. So I'm just entangled in his energy, meaning I kind of came in to bring it back into the system and feeling like I was excluded in a sense. That was my perception of it. So, and again, this is not about kind of blaming or guilt or shame or anything. I mean, because it was my perception that I was excluded. Maybe I excluded myself, but just the whole understanding and the just the actions taken to honor Clarence and bring him, back. And now I feel like he helps me with this work, as one of the ancestors that helps me with the work.
Well, so there's
And Mars, five, he died at age 5. That's a Mars cycle too, right? That's two
oh, so,
Mars cycles.
so I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like Clarence died at, Mars is like a
Oh,
two,
age 5.
2.5 year cycle, right? So he died at age 5. That was his second Mars return almost, So
Well, there's also an interesting technique that other astrologers, I.B. Jacobson, one of the greats, who would also talk about it, that each degree in the chart describes key ages for us as people,
oh yeah,
each
right.
planetary degree, but also here, since you're saying you're identifying Clarence as, being hit at age 5. So at age 5, the eldest child is hit and killed, Mars, in a third house traveling of short distance travel, third house
Hmm.
accident, right?
Hmm.
That's what you had mentioned to me when you were first discussing your chart in Clarence.
Yeah,
There's the connection of that Mars. And
yeah.
here it suggests maybe age 7 is when Clarence's death was in some way encapsulated, in this family experience. I mean, it might even suggest that. I'm just throwing things out here,
Hmm.
maybe inappropriately, but I kind of wonder, you know, I think you're saying, the family dynamic here, and how you embody Clarence, or were aware of Clarence, or certainly you brought Clarence and his memory, into the fore of your family. It was
Yeah.
liberating between you and your father that you did that.
Honoring him. And one of the ways that you can really, because it's like, how do you really heal all of this, right? One of the ways that you do that is by hanging his picture on your wall.
Right on.
You're just
And
honoring, you're remembering he's included, so that's important to do even with miscarriages or abortions. That can really settle energy, is if you find a way to honor. It's kind of like when, I watch a lot of paranormal shows, and it's kind of like the spirits can be it not at rest until they're honored some way, so it was not like we were receiving a haunting from Clarence, but I think it really settled the energy just to bring a picture of him and to honor him in that way, to hang
now
it
I
on the wall.
well, I realize your father was not born. I don't think did not know Clarence
Oh yeah,
himself.
no. No.
However, your father's sister did, Dolores, did know Clarence, and for all we know, your chart as a birth chart and those planetary placements describe, they not only describe our character, but our character as an interwoven piece in our family. I think your chart's describing, as you said, something significant with family, root cause in the family that involved Mars, involved third house of siblings, which it did, Clarence's death. That maybe for all we know, you even look like, or you carry some energy. Maybe there was some karmic connection, as you say there is, between you and
Mhm.
Clarence, that in some psychic way had an impact on your family or impact on your father. I mean, it
Mhm.
is it is striking that you saw the photograph. You brought it out from obscurity. You have it hanging on your office wall now. Your father had it, I believe you said, for a period of time as well. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you were the key factor to this healing awakening for your father. One could
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helped our relationship. and it helped me feel more connected in the family. So,
And as you say, your father then began to inquire about
yeah,
your worldly
yeah,
interactions
yeah.
as a practitioner.
He would ask about my work every time I asked, I saw him and I talked to him, and I noted it because it just cracked me up. I mean, so
Normally, a son Mars would talk about son daddy Mars, a martial career, or son daddy Mars, and a martial exchange or perturbance, or a martial rub. You know, it can be
yeah.
both a joining factor, a father who goes hunting with their son or daughter, or a father who has some problem with a
Hmm.
child in some energetic way. I mean, you did
Yeah.
say you were a bit of the Uranian, your outer world. You're a bit of the kind of the change agent in your family,
Yeah, yeah, I definitely am. Continue to be.
right?
So I like that role though now.
Right on. Well, so here's Clarence's
Yep.
chart, and then you also have Clarence and your chart wrapped around each other. I don't know if you
Mhm.
wanted to share, either Clarence's chart, some highlights there, or your connection to Clarence and his astrological chart.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe it would be best in the interest of time just to go to the bi-wheel of the two of us. So
Uh-huh.
um, you know, there's a lot of really interesting connections. One of the main ones that I was kind of floored by is that Clarence's Mars placement creates a very tight yod pattern with my Jupiter moon.
And the yod or yod, Y-O-D, a yod or yod is known for what?
So the way I look at it is that I call it the finger of man meets the finger of God. It's like an aspect of fate, if you will.
Indeed.
And so meaning that in a way, I think that I might have unconsciously or subconsciously always been drawn toward family constellation work because I knew there was healing in it for me and for so many others. And so his accident, his sudden passing, you know, was kind of my connection into clearing something for me and to really facilitate when you see the magic of family constellation work in your life, you're just really then like I kind of become obsessed with it. I that's my favorite thing to do is do a constellation because they're always unique, different, and the person, at the end there's always peace and resolution. And but there's a lot of connections between Clarence and I. And I think, looking back at it, I just was always interested in that story, like why, that was the story that stood out in my mind. And so, his Mars is on my Neptune.
So we're saying that just for the folks who are viewing, here's Lisa's chart, here's Clarence's chart, and Clarence's 23 Scorpio Mars. When we wrap that chart of Clarence around Lisa's birth chart, here we have that 23 Scorpio Mars on top of your Neptune.
Mhm.
Now, so you're saying that that
And it's very
Neptune in your
spiritual work. I think this is work is very spiritual because
absolutely.
or, if you could bring it into the scientific, it's very quantum because it's energy work, and that's Pluto, and that's, I'm sorry, Neptune is, energy work.
Well, it is interesting that you
Mhm.
have Neptune, essentially rising or to rise in your chart, the next planet to rise. It
Yeah.
suggests your persona, your identity of self, is connected to Neptunian themes, the unseen or unknown, or the spirit or spiritual or philosophical spiritual.
Yeah.
And that Neptune in your own birth chart, as you said, is in a yod with Jupiter and Moon. That's terribly interesting that you see that. And Neptune also squares your black moon and your
Hmm.
Venus Mars bundle in the bottom of your chart.
Yeah.
You know, I look at Neptune as where there is either confusion in the family or where there are secrets or things that are not told, or things that are hidden. Neptune here in the first means that whatever is hidden, not told, or unclear in the family for you stands out like a sore thumb. You know, it's like it's
Right.
right there. The hidden themes
Right.
of the psychology of the family members, or your father, your mother, your siblings, the hidden themes that others don't really talk about for you, it's like as plain as the nose in your face. A person, so
Right.
for you, it's right there. And it's interesting that um, Clarence's Mars, clearly in his birth chart, involved in some way, if we go back at age 5, with his death and his accident. That Mars of Clarence is on that Neptune, highlighting what's not seen or known or discussed.
And look at his, and at the time, like his north node is conjunct my ascendant, right?
his North Node, right? And so in a birth chart, astrologers think that the North Node deals with dharma or sort of karmic. It's a karmic connection point. Would that be
Mm-hmm.
fair?
Yep, exactly. It was right
And
on his, well, sorry, we don't have a timed birth for him. So that's the hard part in doing this work is that it's, when you're looking at your ancestors' charts, oftentimes you can't find the birth time. So
right,
you
we don't
can
know if
rectify
Clarence
it
is
or intuit it, but
right.
yeah,
We don't know if Clarence is a daytime baby or nighttime. We have no idea what his
right,
time is. We're just doing a 12 noon here, right?
right.
But it is interesting that Clarence has a moon in Capricorn,
Very close
so
to my sun in Capricorn. Hmm.
very close to your sun in Capricorn.
Hmm.
Carl Jung said I think it was a sampling of 720 there, about 725 charts that Jung did, Jung an astrologer, but not just Freud's sidekick, but Carl Jung the astrologer, said that when there's a moon sun conjunction, that is the connecting point between husband and wife. It's like one of the primary relational connectors. Anybody who's got in this case, anybody who's got a moon in Capricorn that a Capricorn person it connects with is going to have a bond, a real familial bond.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
also interesting. Clarence's black moon
Yep.
is conjoined his birth moon, and so Clarence has a black moon. Things that are hidden
Hmm.
or not discussed conjoin
Hmm.
Clarence's moon. Moon is also mommy in a chart, and Clarence's black moon conjunction is on top of your sun.
Hmm. Yep.
Themes that are hidden, forgotten, buried, or in some ways carry trauma,
Yeah.
uh, are powerful. So family themes, let's say, on your sun, that you're really tuned into those hidden themes. As you said, Scorpio rising that you are tuned into hidden themes.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you do the constellation work, what you will typically do with one or two family members perhaps is take a person's birth chart and a family member, and maybe you would compare them and wrap one chart around another and look at
Yeah.
connecting points.
I do that. So when I do a session, I will get their birth data. And then whatever it is that, in family constellation work, you work on one issue you want to positively shift. And so I will ask if there's anybody in their family system that has the same pattern. Sometimes like estrangements, they can be, my mother didn't speak to her sister and now I'm not speaking to my sister, so let's get those four women's charts and look at it, right? So you can start to look at the themes. um I also keep the client's chart handy because oftentimes they will place, we talked about when they place the objects in, they will place the objects in positions where they have a planet, or they have a configuration. One client just literally replicated her chart with her objects, and
You're
I
saying
said,
by coincidence they'll play something,
yeah,
but
by coincidence, right? Yeah. So it's all of it becomes really important. And it's just a lot about following the energy of it and seeing, that's the training that I received is when they set something up, I can see what's out of order. And then the healing statements, meditations, just sometimes just forcing a movement, can relax it, put it back in order, and there can be a resolution. So what I love about my story is, and I told my teacher, I wrote him a testimonial. I said,
ah,
this all got cleared without me doing a constellation. This is the impact of this work. It's like just by witnessing or representing for other families, this all magically, why did that picture show up on the top of that pile on, and why did I find it? It's all, that's the magic of it is, it creates those conditions. It's almost like the spirit's nudging you, like, go in there, find that, and, this all cleared up, but I just didn't do a piece of work on it, you know,
well, that's implying, as you said, that kind of the quantum field
quantum.
of things that
Yeah.
that um, intention or action or mindfulness can have a rippling effect
Yeah.
across a family system. You're saying literally one family member who does growth work, therapeutic growth work, healing growth work, whether they are connected to that family member or not, it ripples across the family psyche.
Yeah. I mean, maybe just the awareness of, Clarence was excluded. I'm fascinated with Clarence. Let's bring Clarence back in. And maybe just the awareness facilitated all of this magic that occurred, for everything to come back into place.
And then I hear that what has happened for you is the awareness as an astrologer, as for all of us, students of astrology, like where do you start when you study astrology? You start with your own chart.
Right.
Of course, just, we have our own chart. We can know ourselves and we know our journey, and all Western astrologers certainly start with looking at their own chart to understand the formula of astrology and the archetype of it. So the beginning student of Western astrology might say, oh, well, if moon is mommy and sun is daddy, and my sun, symbolizing father, is there with Mercury, mercurial mental, and there with Mars, something to do with action or accident or, some kind of driving force, I'm sure you'd be looking for connectors unconsciously, at least to, as you say, in the
Mhm.
quantum field, to make sense of that pattern in your chart, because that star pattern, that map, that astronomical star map of when any of us are born, when you were born, shows us graphically your father and his sense of empowerment around third house of siblings in some way plays out in your psyche and or in your family, or maybe your father's understanding of you. Had your father actually himself, had your father known Clarence, I would have thought even more powerfully that you might embody elements of Clarence, you know. But as you said, when you
Mhm.
look at the chart of Clarence and you wrapped Clarence around your chart, there are these not surprising connections that astrology shows you to your father's past sibling Clarence. I mean, I think the birth charts describe deeper themes that are percolating in a family system, whether they are consciously percolating, like people discuss it, talked
Yeah.
about, or not talked about. And I think you're
Right.
saying that, yes? That Clarence, for instance, was not talked about. He was excised from the family memory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Clarence is an example in your family of material that's typical in most, maybe every family.
Yeah. And oftentimes, I mean, at least we knew about the story, right? We knew the story, when you have a miscarriage or um, you know, you have somebody's born, you have a mother has a child that it's not, the father that's raising him is not the father, is not the biological father, right? That child's in the biological father's system and his when that's the case with adoptions, right? So there's just a lot going on in family systems that, that when brought to the light of awareness and worked with intentionally, it can really, really be a positive healing force in a family system.
I think
And then the descendants don't have to come in and work this out, So that's the beauty of it.
and I think to me, I hear also um, the idea that each person who incarnates comes into some kind of environment, some kind of social and or family system, hopefully a family system that's normative, we think, but some kind of family social normative system helps them orient themselves to the world around them. And the
Yeah.
chart describes that.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. That Mars placement in your chart, at the bottom of your chart, you're saying for you was a an awakening. That Mars deals with accidents, for instance, in the third house of siblings. In this case, your father's sibling, your
Mhm.
son indicating daddy in the third house of siblings. Saying there's a sibling theme in your chart that stands out. Um,
Mhm.
what I'm getting to is, so I think you're saying, let's say in family systems, if our grandparents went through the Holocaust,
Yeah.
or our grandparents or great grandparents rather went through, or great great went through slavery, American slavery or British slavery, whatever. I mean, the symbols in a chart will describe that in the genome,
Yeah.
the physical genome and the psyche of the family, whether it's known or not known. That it's embedded in the genome. You could say maybe on the quantum field of soul consciousness that these souls are in some way interconnected.
And we talked about several times epigenetics, right? So they turn markers on and off without altering the DNA. So when somebody does a family constellation session, they can either maybe turn the gene on or off, and the expression is different. So, you think about having a Holocaust survivor, in the family, and just the energy thread of, fear, or, just anger, terror, whatever it is, going down the line, several generations, 5 6 generations down the line. It didn't happen to that descendant, but it's in that energy thread.
And astrologically, it's in that descendants
Yes.
chart.
Yes, you
That
could pick
that
it
that
up.
epigenetic piece,
Yes.
the psycho emotional piece, the quantum field piece, the soul to soul journey. Ultimately, we're a bunch of souls together in
Yeah.
the quantum field of souls connecting to other souls. The chart describes, whether we know as astrologers for sure
Yeah.
exactly what the chart's describing. But I love in your example, this one that you brought for today, and I know there's more to come between you and I and your work and what you're sharing. Uh, that Mars piece and the Sun piece and the daddy sibling piece, his sibling getting hit by a car at age 5, and the implication of the oldest child inheriting the farm, but now that cannot be. But your father did inherit the farm,
Yeah.
literally. These are all really incredibly powerful archetypes,
Yeah.
and that
Then
your chart shows this. Your chart's mirroring
Yeah. And
that.
if we think about,
This,
we continue it further. He took over the farm, then he got out of farming, he became a salesperson. Third house, right? Mercury,
and
Gemini.
you were a salesperson.
And I was a salesperson. So I kind of, so before I became an astrologer, so it's, I always say to people, like, I wouldn't be able to know this story by seeing my chart, but when I hear the story, it's the archetypes that you can really tune into and say, this was the expression for this person of how it played out.
And the chart tells us there's, the chart actually for astrologers commonly, we know the chart planetary placements tell us kind of where to look in what
Yes.
departments, what areas of the family social dynamic, and
Yeah.
what areas were highlighted when this baby arrived in a family system. I
Yeah.
think all astrologers look at our birth charts as my chart, your chart, rather than thinking, oh, some woman had an infant come out of her body at this time in this particular year, this particular season. That is what our birth charts are, after all.
Yeah.
So, thank you again for coming. Tell us a little bit how people can reach you.
Yeah, so my company name is Future Echo. So you can reach me at Lisa at Future Echo 2 E's .org. Or my website is futureecho.org. I do everything. Astrology is the basis of everything I do. And as a teaser for another episode, maybe, is I have a very interesting story about following a soul's journey through birth charts and constellating it and putting things back in order. So there's a lot you can explore on my site. I have a number of different services that I offer, and energy work, and so
We will talk about that. So
yeah.
Lisa Hagenbach at futureecho.org. And also, of course, folks, please, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel and my Apple Podcasts, subscriptions are helpful. It helps people actually locate the program and have it listed. So the more that subscribe, the more likely the program gets listed as choices for people hunting for astrology programming. And of course, Lisa and I both take clients, so by all means, feel free to reach out to Lisa, reach out to me for client work, or if you need to, you can reach out through our episode here, and I'll help connect you with Lisa. Thank you, dear Lisa.
Thank
Again, it's
you,
wonderful to
Alexander.
work with you always. And yeah, I think you just hit on some other themes. There's some really cool things we can discuss here about
You can look at
charts and
soul
karma.
issues, and that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we'll see you again for another episode.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll talk and see you later.
Bye.